Good evening. Welcome to the Planning Board meeting of August 21st, 2018. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Steve Weber is not here this evening, and Tyler Perrin is not here. They're going to be absent tonight. Do we need to appoint any alternates? 1, 2, 3, 4. I could. We do have a full board. We have a quorum. So, does either of the alternates wish to vote this evening, if they wanted to fill in for the selectmen?
You can't.
I'm sorry.
For
For the board, of the planning board? I'm sorry. Okay, all right. So Kate is going to be appointed as an alternate voting member this evening. I'll do the roll call of members present. Michael Croto, chair.
Joe Blanchett, clerk.
Dennis Page, member.
Kimberly Queen, vice chair.
Tony Shireki, alternate.
Okay. Public input. Any non-agenda items not on the agenda for this evening that people would like to address this evening before the board? Hearing none, I will close public input on non-agenda items and open it up to the first order of business this evening. An application by Plex Realty Trust, KBT Realty Trust, CWA Realty Trust, Mel's Funway Park LLC, and Joan M. DeRocher Revocable Trust. The application intends to consolidate 3 lots into one and a lot line adjustment at tax map 20, lots 15, 16, 17, 19, and tax map 20, lots 7 and 14, located at 454 and 448 Charles Bancroft Highway. We also have an application by Mel's Funway LLC for a non-residential site plan. Owner of the property is KBT Realty Trust and Plex Realty Trust, located at 454 Charles Bancroft Highway, tax map 20, lots 15 and 17. Purpose of site plan is to remove the existing driving range and laying out a proposed bumper boat pool on lot 15 and numerous kiddie attractions on lot 17. This plan was accepted by the board on March 20th, 2018. The applicant is present. Attorney Perlman is here representing the applicant. So would you introduce yourselves to the board?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. My name is Andy Perlman. I'm an attorney in Nashua with Prunier and Perlman. With me at the table is Tony Basso of Keach Nordstrom, project engineer. Behind me are Wayne Caulfield and Michael Accomando, owners of the Mel's Funway Park and trustees of the various trusts as your applicants tonight. Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would like to discuss procedure for a moment before we get into the site plan application. There are 2 applications that have been submitted to you. One is properly before you tonight. That's the site plan for the bumper boats. The lot line adjustment and consolidation is not before you tonight because the amended application didn't come in until last week. So abutter notices didn't go out in time. We are hopeful that that will be scheduled for your first meeting in September. And what we would like to do tonight is to speak to the bumper boat application. Tony's going to walk you through the updates to the plan, what's been changed, what's the same, and where things stand with the bumper boat and the mini Mel's portion of the plan. And then we're not expecting a vote for conditional approval on that tonight. Because the 2 plans work together. The lot line consolidation eliminates certain lot lines that affect our setback issues with respect to the bumper boats. So that one actually has to get approved first, even though it's coming in second. So that's the first thing. This morning, we received a letter from Attorney Morgan Hollis. We are not going to address that letter tonight because we just received it this morning and we have not had time to process the information in that letter. We do expect to address many of the concerns in that letter through the application itself, through the presentation, through working with Mr. McCara's comments, and any questions the board may address, many of the questions raised by Attorney Hollis. But we will have a substantive response when we come back in September to those issues. But we just got it this morning, and I was in a wake, and Tony was in a funeral. We just haven't had time to process the application, that letter today. And so if that's acceptable, Mr. Chairman, I would just have Tony Basso speak to the plan and then run through comments from Mr. Macara. We have submitted a traffic summary, not a full traffic report, but a traffic summary from our traffic engineer. We can try to answer questions on that. We can have the traffic engineer here next time if the board would like that. If that's okay.
Okay, that's fine. I think what we'll do is we'll do the presentation. If the board has any questions, the board can ask questions as we go along. And then, if Jay has anything he wants to add, he'll add. And then what I'll do is I'll open it up to public comment.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, for the record, Tony Basso, Keach Nordstrom. So the bunker bowl pool is on the bunker bowl pool plan with the tree playland area here is mostly the same. We made some changes that were asked for. We originally had some parking up in here, which we eliminated, so that way we wouldn't be mixing parking with pedestrian movements. We also fenced in completely these different attractions, and we went through and fixed the parking and access here. We added some parking spaces where we could. There's some over here that were added that are new, as well as revamping these over here. So we're at about 100. We're at 199 right now, proposed. We also added the haunts weren't shown. These are some comments that were made in the past of the haunts. We've added the haunts. We also cleaned up, like I said, this area. It was there was parking in here. This is the ticket booth, and this is where you're going to buy this. And also the bumper boat pool thing. We added the building, the shed that's part of the storage for this thing. Also fenced it in. So there's little improvements like that that aren't hugely noticeable, but we did make them. That's pretty much the differences here. So we've tightened it all up too. It was a little more spread out before, and we got actual dimensions on stuff and got everything kind of lined up. So it's actually real data now. It's where it belongs, and so fenced in, controlled. So that's about it. We have more than the parking required in this 106 on there. I have it committed to memory, but we have 199. So I think we exceed, and there's plenty of parking for what these needs are. I think that's it. Anything else you guys can think of that we did different? That's it. So be happy to answer any questions.
Do you want to speak to comments from users?
Now, my understanding was that, I think this was, forgive me, I know this project has been a while. Last time the engineer, Lou Caron for the town, did an assessment on the designs. Has anything changed in terms of from that period?
We took care of everything he asked for in his
Okay.
report.
So the
That's
comments
where the
from the June
parking
26th
layout-
letter,
Yeah.
that's what I'm referring to.
Right. That's where the parking letter changed. The
Okay.
parking layout changed. There were a couple things like that. It wasn't a lot. It was a couple of items.
Okay.
That had a concrete walk, right? That was added.
I think there
That
was
was one of
something on
those
one of the
issues.
plans. There was details for a concrete walk.
Yep. That was on Lou's letter.
Oh.
Was that added?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
On the new comments, there's some new technical comments here. The pool, the safety fence elements, the parking, we're gonna have to deal with that separately, but traffic memos next, and safety fencing is at least 4 feet high. That's absolutely the case. We didn't show the gates where they would access. There's a question, how do the patrons access? There'll be gates in those fences. We just didn't place them on the plan, but because of that scale, I mean, they're fraction, but there'll be gates, controlled access points to get in those. We can show them somehow, I'm sure. Okay, we can add that reference and about the lot line adjustment plan. We can show, then there was a question about showing a protective oil radius. We can absolutely do that. So there's a question about uses being added. I'm not sure. I think we've shown everything that's going to be, so.
You recall the, the bumper boat, we had pictures and you remember seeing those. And there are 16 boats, 20 boats? 20 boats. The pool size for 20 boats. The rectangular boxes, you remember they're bounce houses. There's a gem drive. It's really designed for kids. The intent is, while they hope to capture more people coming to Mills, it's really to keep folks at Mills for perhaps a little longer, entertain the younger ones while kids are on the older brothers and sisters on the go-karts. There's the mini go-kart that has its own fenced area. You can see that. And again, the fencing is that 4-foot fencing, what Kevin Lynch called out and Jay called out some time ago.
Does the board have any questions for the applicant?
No question.
Well, okay. Jay, do you have any concerns?
I think there's a few obviously that have already been referenced that came in the staff memo. I think that the most significant concern is understanding the basis for determining the number of patrons, because that's really the driver for establishing the number of parking spaces, and that's just the one thing I shouldn't say the one thing, but that is a significant thing that we haven't seen. How is that determined, both for existing as well as for the additional patrons that are anticipated?
That's an owner.
Do we have that? On one of these sheets?
Well, it's based on the number. It's one space per 4 patrons, but they gave, the owners gave us how we got to that number. Like, what is the patron? Where are we getting that number from?
So I don't know if that's based on experience. Is that based?
That is based on, that
facilities?
is exactly
Based
what
on-
it's based on. Is we talked about we met with the client several times regarding what their needs were for parking, and that's what those numbers are based on, was their needs, and knowing we met them. And I think there's a Litchfield reg for I don't know if it applies, but the 1 space per 4 is out of the regulations that for this type of, I don't remember what the exact category is, but that's what we used for that. But it's the parking total, the type of use that they would need, how many they would need. We know we have enough for that. So that's, I think, I don't have the regs with, do you have a copy?
So is there any kind of standard or guide to estimating patronage?
I don't know.
It's based upon the history of the use, is what Wayne and Mike would tell you.
Well, I know that's been a concern of the board. And I think it's something that needs to be addressed in terms of the, the existing use versus, what's going to happen, down the road. And the history of that use, I think, is important because, it provides information that's relevant because if, you're going to be adding attractions like this, I think it's important to have something to base it on. So that is something that I would, ask the applicant to
Sure.
really
We'll
think
detail
about
that
and
out for
consider-
you.
Yeah, and try to be, I think, I think that this is something that it's doable. I mean, I think you can put it together, and I think that we need that information. I think that's something that's important for
Absolutely.
this. So I just want to throw that out there. So, and I think it seems to be a concern. Obviously, I know Jay and I, spoke briefly today about that. So, I think it's important, and the board understands, that's a concern. So, are you going to do something about a septic system? I know maybe I'm going way ahead of here,
No, that's okay.
but septic, are you working on that? Is that something in progress? What's going on with that? I know there was something about putting in a septic system.
Well, Tony can speak to that. Where the location of the pool impacted the existing septic system behind the old Shorty's restaurant.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
And you go ahead.
Yeah. So that system was a giant butterfly system for a restaurant. Okay. It's no longer a restaurant and the use is much smaller and the septic system is actually completely we don't need the giant butterfly anymore. So we're getting rid of one of those. And what we're going to use is the one leach field, which is not getting trampled on, we're going to use. And we, so what we're going to do, we're going to use that. And then we provided a design as well for the replacement of that ultimately, if it needed to happen.
And I also noticed there's going to be something about the protected well radius. I know that was an issue. I don't know if that has to be shown on the plan or I think that if something is going to happen, I would.
That's for lot 7. We'll absolutely show it on the plan. It's not going to be anywhere near that leach field, but it's no problem to show that.
And what about fencing? I don't know, maybe you briefly touched on it, but I mean, have you made sure that there's going to be sufficient fencing for if there is going to be fencing and how that is going to work in terms of
For the uses there?
Yeah.
They're all fenced. We've got it all on the plan. There's like the kiddie bumper boat pool is actually individually fenced as well as the kiddie go-kart track. And then there's an overall fence around the whole kiddie area. And of course, there's a fence around the larger bumper boat pool as well. So that's all shown on the plan.
Board have any questions for the applicant? Just before I open it up to public comment.
The type of fencing, I might just not be able to find this fence on here. We can do that. Because it's a 4-foot fence, and because there's, where the bumpers and some things, it's very typical fencing that, where we can climb through it and everything. And it's like we fence in a pool.
Right. I think it's chain link.
It's a chain link fence.
Yeah.
It was similar to the fencing that's there on site there around the go-kart track and just
Okay.
standard chain link fence.
Yeah.
Are both of the pools like above ground structures?
No, the bumper boat pool is 3 feet deep.
3 feet deep.
3 feet deep down in some below grade. The the kids bumper boat is like a big inflatable pool. Sits on the ground.
Thank you.
And that gets put away at the end of the season.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, if the board doesn't have any questions, I am going to open it up right now to public comments. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this particular site plan? If you would, could you please step forward, come to the table, introduce yourself to the board and where you're from?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Morgan Hollis. I'm an attorney with Gottesman and Hollis in Nashua, and I'm here representing three clients, Jill Charbonneau, Sally Ron Bouchard, and Joanne Giles, abutters to the application this evening, both the subdivision plan and the site plan that are presented to you. With me this evening is Rick Charbonneau. You all received my lengthy letter of August 20th, which I apologize for the length, but it's a pretty detailed explanation of our position. Unfortunately, I had drafted this probably 3 months ago, but I waited for an amended plan. They filed that. Then I waited for a traffic study, and you all know what you receive for a traffic study, so I had to revise the plan. If I kept submitting the letter over and over, I'd have to keep revising it. So I apologize, but it wasn't really on me. I had to wait for that final traffic report, which I did receive last Friday. I was away, but I quickly addressed it Monday. So rather than go through that letter, because I think what Attorney Perlman said sounds appropriate to me, he wants to look at it, he wants to review it, maybe come up with some changes or answers for you. You all have it, you can read it. I don't expect you even had a chance to read it or go through it and look at the plan. But I would, for the record, like to touch very quickly on what I call the 7 issues that we think are before you. The subdivision plan, which is sort of off the table, but I'll say it anyway. Our biggest issue with the subdivision consolidation plan is there's an addition of new land, someone else's property, which brings in a whole new range of abutters. And that additional land is not even shown on this site plan. So I'm presuming, therefore, they have no use for that land. It's just going to be open land. Yet, on the subdivision plan are the words reserved for seasonal overflow parking. I don't know what rights that gives them if you were to approve this plan, but it suggests to me that they have got your tacit approval that they can park back there. This is all going to be part of this property now, a single lot, once the plan is approved as a consolidation. And if it's approved with that language, it suggests to me that they have some type of right to have seasonal overflow parking. I've searched high and low in your regulations. There's no such thing. You either have a parking lot or you don't have a parking lot. In any event, seasonal overflow parking is a non-residential use, and it must meet all of your criteria. You got to go through A through Z on criteria, and it has to be shown on a site plan. It is not shown on a site plan. So either they want it and they have to show it on a site plan, or they don't want it and they have to remove it. And if they remove it, it's empty land and they can't use it for parking. So that's the big elephant in the room for my client's concern. Is that going to be a parking area or not? And if it is, you got to show it, describe it, pave it or not pave it, put landscaping, put a driveway. I don't even know how people are going to get there over to where we know the parking is going to be needed, Spooky World. So that's the biggest elephant in the room. On the site plan, some of this is a little confusing, but I think I understand, and maybe they can help me out. The traffic memo suggests the only thing that's happening out here is the addition of bumper boat pool. But it's clear that there are some other new items, and I've listed them in detail. So I just refer you to my letter, which says, here's a bunch of stuff on this plan that wasn't on a plan before. So therefore, there are changes to this site, and you all have to evaluate those changes. But I think in terms of the bumper pool, what they're referring to is not just the bumper pool, but the bumper pool and the enclosure, which we now know on the plan holds inflatables and holds a mini track, etc. Since there were no dimensions, the traffic memo says the traffic impact is based upon square footage. That's what the traffic engineer's memo sets forth. And I'm presuming that square footage is all of that area, but I don't know. It would be nice to know what that 32,000 square feet is about so you can understand what the traffic memo is based on. But clearly the traffic memo only talks about bumper boat pool. And if that's all they're referring to, they didn't pick up on the other changes in the plan for traffic impact. So that needs to be reviewed by either them or explained further by them or by you. Our conclusion is similar to the questions raised by Mr. McCara and by yourself, Mr. Chairman. That is, I'm not sure how the parking calculation started. That is, what's the basis of the number of patrons? We don't really have an explanation, and I think you need it, we need it, maybe right or wrong. I have made my own calculation just because I felt I ought to explain a basis why we think there's inadequate parking. And that's contained under number 3 of my letter, and it lists all the various uses there, and it cites your regulations as to what you need for spaces. I think they can answer that either to you or to me or to both of us. There's no landscape. Well, there is some landscaping. I pointed out how minimal it is. I really think that if this is going to be an attraction and it's a toe in the water and it's likely it'll become bigger, and that may be all good for the town, and there's probably going to be room to park if they do it right, they got to show proper landscaping around that fencing. They got to show proper walkways. If people are going to be there, this is a non-residential use. You don't just put something out, put a fence around it, and call it a day. It's up to you, but the planning regulations don't allow that. Overflow parking, again, I've gone over that, but they ought to show a sidewalk or a walkway or something. Your regulations call for sidewalks. If they're not going to be sidewalks, it ought to be a walk or a path, and it ought to be designated. How do you get from there and back? How do you get from the existing parking to there and back? Is there going to be any lighting? Is this going to be open at night? And are there going to be kids out there? Will there be lighting? That doesn't seem to be shown. And then the final issue is sort of the second elephant in the room, which is Spooky World. We know it's not just a weekend event. Like sometimes you might have a 4-day carnival in town and it's held at the Little League ball field and nobody gets a site plan for that. This is by their own admission, 22 to 24 days. It's an event. There's parking there. You've seen it. I've seen it. It's an issue, and I don't see anything in the record other than a suggestion that there's 11 acres off-site of available parking, and I've cited that in Mr. Attorney Perlman's letter. I don't know where that is. Your regulations do not allow off-site parking. They need a variance. They don't show it on a plan. Maybe this new site is going to be the seasonal overflow parking will take up all that necessary parking, but they just really ought to pull it together. And I don't know what the answer is, and hopefully they'll come up with that answer. But those two concerns, the existing use of Spooky World being shown on a site, yet no parking for it, and where are the 11 acres and who are they impacting? If you live next to the 11 acres and all of a sudden people started parking for 22 days, I can pretty much guess that you wouldn't be happy when there was no notice to you given. There was no one telling you that this was going to be a parking lot, and it seems contrary to your own zoning ordinances. So those are the issues I raised. I believe that they're all answerable. It may prevent them from coming in with a plan the way they have it today. They may need zoning relief, or they may need further waivers. I have pointed out in my letter, just obviously it's something you know about, but there are certain standards on waivers, and you've got to go through them. Waivers have been challenged in court, so there are cases that establish waivers aren't just handed out willy-nilly. There's got to be a hardship there, and you've got to demonstrate it, and you've got to make a case why the regulation doesn't apply to you. So I just point that out in my letter. I think other than that, I think you have to wait for further information before we can really dive into it. And unless you want me to, Mr. Chairman, I'd prefer not to go through the letter. I just think that it's unnecessary.
It's not necessary. I did read it, so
We're going to be back here.
I'm sure. And I think definitely I think the issue of traffic needs to be addressed, and I think that's something that's going to need to be done. Anything else that you'd like to add this evening?
Yeah, back in June, they had an event. There was a pretty good sized event, somewhere around the 19th, 20th of June, something like that. And I was coming back from Manchester, and there's There's cars parked everywhere, sides of the road, everywhere. They're parked all over the place and on the lawns out there, every place, across the street from them. There's two women pushing baby carriages, trying to go down the north side of the road in the gravel, and you can drive by there and see what it is. They gave up. I mean, I'm stopped, waiting, see what they're going to do. They finally went out in the road because they couldn't push their carriages down the side of 3A. Those are my concerns. They have to address traffic. I've been through there too many times at Spooky World where people are walking all over the place, going between traffic that's stopped the whole bit. It's dark. It's not lit up. I'm not against any business. I'm not against these guys, but they got to do it right. And that's where we're going to push because, again, I don't think any mother that's going to an event there should be pushing a baby carriage down a gravel shoulder. They're going to have something there. They need to provide the proper walkways and things like that for people to get in there and safely.
Thank you. Anything else? No? Is anybody else, the members of the public, wish to speak this evening? Okay. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. And hearing nobody else, the public comment will remain open. But I'm going to take this back to the board. Does the board have any questions for the applicant? Any further questions for the applicant? Does the applicant wish to respond to some of those concerns? I mean,
We will be.
Okay.
We'll get you a breakdown of our parking. I mean, so we didn't just make it up willy nilly. We spent a lot of hours with Mike and Wayne just nailing down what do they need for parking. Just as a last comment, I don't want folks to have the impression that these guys put on Spooky World, just by themselves without any contact with the town or any supervision. Months ago, 2018, they've already met with the police department for Spooky World this year, which they've done for the past 10 years. Right? This is a well-coordinated event, and it is true. We will tell you that the first 2 or 3 years, there were parking. There was a lot of parking all over the place, but it has gotten much better working hand in hand with the police department, hand in hand with the fire department. So it's not as if it's just willy-nilly parking anywhere, and anything goes, and just there to make a lot of money. But these guys have it down. They know what they're doing. They work with. Do you have a police chief anymore? Okay. They work hand in hand with the town. So it's just not done in the abstract. But we will address these issues, as these guys have for the past 10 years.
do you know if when the police do traffic details, maybe I don't know if you know this or not, but of your own knowledge, but do you know if they use, allow people to go from back and forth, or stopping the traffic to let people cross the road at all?
Yeah,
Or?
if somebody's gonna cross the street.
Michael Acamando.
Sorry, Michael Acamando.
That's okay.
We hire somebody who's bonded with the state to be there in the road. There's not one night that there's not a police car that's in the street with its lights on. On the weekends, we have 2 police cars on both ends of the property, so people are well aware that it's time to slow down, make sure that you're aware of what's going on. And nobody crosses the streets without that bonded person right there in the street. In the police department, we have several officers that are detailed every single evening. You can verify that in the town as well. We've been working with the fire department as well. They're there every single night that we're open. So it's not that type of show. I know a lot of people in this town have gone to our show, and I think that they're well aware of how we put it together and how we take care of it in many different ways. It's not really event.
And excuse my ignorance, and it's I do drive down there quite a bit, but I don't remember. Is there a crosswalk there at all to go
There is
across
no
the street?
crosswalk.
There is no crosswalk to go across the street. Okay, I just wanted. All right. Okay. Jay, do you have anything to add, or
No, I think
You think
the major issues have been addressed.
rest? Okay.
Anything more on the bumper boat, the mini mills area, other than addressing the parking counts and the traffic, we didn't have a lot more to add to it.
Well, I think that's, it makes it a little bit, we don't have the other plan for
Yeah,
the subdivision. And I think that's so we're kind of tied with what we have right now. But I definitely think that the traffic issue is going to have to be addressed. And I'll say that again. I think that's something that you folks really have to look at. I think it's, and the history of use. I think that really has to be addressed as well. So I really think that's something that's going to have to be considered in going forward with this. I think it's something that the board is going to be interested in. And obviously, hearing from the abutters, that is something that is a concern to them as well. I know we're not going to conditionally approve anything this evening, but my question is, unless the board. Oh, I'm sorry, Attorney Hollis. I apologize.
Andy and I have been doing this for a long time.
Okay.
We don't want to share from that. It might be valuable. It would be if I were in Andy's shoes, and I think it's valuable to us. I've raised several what I call little petty issues, but picky issues, such as walkways around this design of the fence, landscaping needs. Those are small potatoes, but they're in your regulations. And if you have a landscaping plan in front of you, you've heard our concern. We think that's woefully inadequate for a landscape design for what they're doing out here. They're essentially taking up a bunch of parking spaces. They're putting down some new structures, putting down some new fencing, and they're going to have some people walking around there. And this is not a temporary operation. This is hopefully part of an increase in mills. You might want to weigh in as a board tonight and tell them whether this is fine. If you think it's fine, it meets the requirements, and they don't need any more landscaping, they don't need any more sidewalks, so be it. But if not, if you agree with us as abutters, it really ought to be done right in accordance with your regulations, then you should give them that feedback so that they can go back and look at what they can do. That's my request of the board and suggestion, that we're all here tonight. We've taken another 15 minutes to talk about that, and maybe the consensus of the board is it's fine, and at least we'll all know where you're going. Doesn't mean we agree. Maybe that you'll say you need more and they won't agree and they won't do anything. But it just doesn't make sense to come back here in November. He's got answers to my letter. And one of the issues is, well, what are you going to do with the landscaping? Well, gee, we didn't think about that. So that's my request to the board maybe tonight. So that I think landscaping, walkways, those are two small issues, but they're probably somewhat important to us. And connecting sidewalks. If you feel like we do that they're going to have to show how you get from the seasonal overflow parking, and they're going to have to show where the parking spaces are, and they're going to have to show how you get from those spaces down, you ought to tell them now instead of coming and making them come back and say, go back and redesign your plan. And if you're not ready to, then we'll be back next month. Thank you. That's just my suggestion.
Well, thank you, Attorney Hollis. I appreciate your input.
What landscaping do you have?
Does the board have any issues with the landscaping or the walkways?
No.
They're going to discuss setbacks on the next meeting, right? Which might help with some of the landscaping.
Lou had brought up that they should label the sidewalks and stuff already. I thought appropriate symbol for proposed concrete sidewalk and site layout.
But that doesn't address the seasonal.
Oh, the seasonal parking.
Right.
That's it.
There's no walkway from the seasonal parking to the main lot. I mean, personally, I would like to see that,
Okay.
but that's up to the board if they think that's necessary or not.
I think it does work more than just a note saying seasonal parking. That's permitted. Consolidation, but if it's that permit going into like the, you know, the record, this is how we're gonna use this land, then I think we do need some kind of plan on how it's used, and maybe it just says like how you're using it now is you've got, you know, police there to help, you've got people from the state there to help. I don't know off the top of my head about when a crosswalk was required and when sidewalks and everything are required. I think we'd have to go back and figure that out, but it's concerning having all the people walking across the side of the road in the dark. With, yes, there's police there, but I mean, we direct to the construction site and everything, not having it, and maybe, I don't know, maybe you guys have cones out or something.
Cones and lighting.
Okay,
There's temporary lighting out there.
so is that recorded in the plan on how that'll be addressed every year so that it's?
No, that's worked out with the police department and the fire department year after year.
And it can change year to year.
It can change. It's only gotten better over the years. Right. They have a retired Litchfield fire department member manages the parking for Spooky World. This is my neighbor, Pierre. What's Pierre's name? Grant. Pierre Grant. Runs the parking. All right. So, you know, again, with the approval, with lights, with cones, with police cruisers out there, policemen, fire department, EMT.
Right.
Right.
I just don't know when it's required to be written down.
Be documented.
Yeah.
Are we mixing the spooky world
Yes.
problem in with what they're trying to do here with the kitty edition?
Well, it's not the kitty edition, it's the.
Well, they're bringing up, and I understand it. I completely understand there's a parking problem. I completely understand your math on the area and the structures. I understand their point of view of the customers that come through. So you have your own calculations, and we're going to meet somewhere in the future. But it sounds like this problem obviously exists today, right? And is this a seasonal for the summer?
We would disagree. We would disagree.
Exactly. I know. I'm just saying, is this the site plan in front of us is for the kitty
What you see
rides
right here.
or whatever is happening here, and you're going to take out some rides and put some other stuff and take out the golf course, whatever. And now we're in, you know, we're trying to fix the problem of the past at the same time. Well, you're not calling a problem, but other are calling a problem. I'm just saying from a planning board perspective, should this be two different issues? Should we make it compliant first and then address this, or do this and then Spooky World may be an enforcement issue later?
In my view, it really is to the discretion of the board. I think you have the discretion to determine whether or not you feel that what's proposed here either impacts other uses that are currently happening on the site and it needs to be addressed, or that there's other uses that are happening on this site that are impacting what's shown here. So I think it really is to your discretion how much more you want to see or how much more interaction there is with the other uses that are happening. So as an example, is there, and I don't know the answer to that, to the extent that parking that's shown here is being used to support other uses on the site, is there a pathway between this parking area and other portions of the site that it's going to serve? That could be something that you might want to consider. I don't know the answer to that, but that might be something that you want to consider. I think it really is to your discretion to the extent to which you think one impacts the other. You could ask for more information, or you could determine that you're satisfied that what's shown here is really not related significantly enough to other issues or other uses on the site. So it does come down to an issue, I think, of your discretion.
The reason I'm asking is when you bring up the landscaping, and now we're bringing up sidewalks outside of the park to solve the Spooky World problem. Oh, that is also maybe getting them into the park as well. So it seems as we're trying to solve two problems and fix a past era issue.
I think the landscaping issue, this is the landscaping plan, I think does go directly to this. So whether or not the board feels that the landscaping that's shown is adequate, there isn't really a regulatory standard that you're looking at that says X number of shrubs that you need. So I think that's going to be an issue for you to decide based on what's here. The crosswalk is a separate issue. The crosswalk sounds as though that's an issue that is being raised towards the spooky world use. And I'd come back to whether or not you feel this use warrants the addition of a crosswalk. I'm not aware that there's any overflow parking that's being shown across the street or anything across the street that somehow supports or interacts with this. So I don't know that would be something you'd look at within the scope of this application.
What was the setback you were talking about that's coming? You said there's another lot we're looking at, and there might be a setback to solve some problems. Is that's where I'm thinking the landscape.
Okay. Let me explain that. The plan that you see on the screen right now assumes the lot consolidation has been approved because there is a property line that roughly parallels one side of the fence of the pool.
Around what used to be the Shorty's building.
Right.
There's a lot out there that
So-
now is consolidated.
So when I said setback, when there's a
That's
lot line there,
okay.
it creates setback. So when we remove the lot line, the setback goes away, which is what I was talking about.
I didn't know if the setback was affecting the landscaping. That's why I was trying to see if everything was related. So should we answer that question? Should we treat it as two separate issues, or should that be standalone for the kiddie ride, or do we try to fix this problem today, or do we wait and see results?
Well, my only concern with that is that they have another plan that they're going to bring to us, and it's a subdivision. That possibly might impact how the land is expanded, or it may do something to impact that. And I don't know if we take the position to separate the two issues. It's just it may become an issue, because we're going to have to address that down the road. I don't know. I mean, that's up to the board, but that's just my concern. Because it sounds like this is going to be coming back to us again, and we're going to be addressing it again. And then it's going to become part of the discussion. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Because this from you, which is a great job, from our regs, shows the upper bound of parking spaces we need based on area of the buildings and whether it's an office building or not. You're going to come back with what actually does happen with the parking. And then we're stuck. Do we go somewhere in the middle?
And I
Do
think
we
that's-
go to the letter of the law?
That's the issue, because I don't think there's anything wrong with the bumper boats and the bouncy house,
Right.
and inflatables.
The parking.
That's fine. Okay. I think the real issue here is the parking issue, and if it's going to be expanded, that's going to create, you can address it now, but then you're going to have to address it again. So, I don't know. What do you think, Jay?
I would agree. I think understanding the basis of the parking estimate that's already been provided for what's existing need, as well as what's proposed, I think is really critical. As I understand it, the applicants are going to provide that.
Yeah, we will provide that. I can tell you, Wayne and Mike will tell you, they'll testify to you that the parking that's being proposed, with 179 spaces, is what?
190.
You had more than 199, right? Is more parking that they need all year, excluding the spooky world, but for Mel's operation, the Laserplex, the pool, the mini Mel's, the restaurant, the golf course, the go-kart, all everything that's there during the summer, what's happening right now, there's plenty of parking. However, we will get you that information.
Okay, I'm just going to open public comment. Mr. Charbonneau.
Okay. I hate to say this, but the statement that Andy just made is not correct. Okay? They had an event in June that wasn't part of Mel's. It was something that overflowed parking everywhere. They have a wine tasting thing that they had every year. that overflows parking everywhere. They basically pretty much closed down the parking lot that they have to put in vending machines or whatever they do. So that parking that's on site, if they say they have sufficient parking on site, they take it away from everybody and they can park off site. Well, back last year when you approved the expansion of Spoopy World, I was in a direct abutter to one of those off-site parking areas. I never was notified. I was a direct abutter. Okay, that you allowed for this off-site parking somewhere. In a couple places I was a direct abutter, in two different pieces.
Was that us?
So
Or zoning?
they do need more parking than what they're telling you, because not just for Spooky World, they hold other events. When they hold these other big events, they need more parking. They need more sidewalks to be safe for the people that get in there.
And, I think that's, the job of the planning board, and that is one of the things, that comes under, is the safety of, the community and making sure that everybody is, is going to be, protected by whatever means, necessary to do that. So I think it is something that needs to be looked at, certainly. I think, as I said, I don't think in terms of what's inside the park, I don't see any issue. But I do see the issue of parking outside, and I think it's gonna. If this other plan comes in and before us, then we're gonna have to decide that as well. So now you've got an additional issue over the one that we've already trying to address. So it's going to make it more of a challenge, I guess. Attorney Hollis.
Yeah,
sorry.
I just want to try to clarify, because I think maybe there was some misunderstanding what I said just a moment ago. The issue I thought the board could talk about is, this is the new area, these two areas.
Yeah.
You already said, where's the entry gate going to be? That's not shown, so that ought to be shown.
Okay.
Number two, how do you get from here to wherever the ticket booth is? This is the relocated ticket booth. Are you going to have a path going there? Is that where people go? You should show the path. How do people get in here? Do they walk down, and do they go in the fencing this way? Do they go in this way? Will there be any benches for anybody? Is it going to be a paved or unpaved path? That is not sufficient detail to meet your regulations right now. That's my opinion. That's what I tried to say in the letter. So that's one issue. The second issue is they proposed some landscaping. They've got a landscaping plan. They show some minimal landscaping in this area. Do you think that's adequate for all of this new development? Should there be shrubs and bushes around these fencing? Walkways shown? Should there be landscaping around this? If the answer is no, we don't care, and we think it meets our regs, that's fine. But now is the time to say, gee, folks, beef up your landscaping. Come on, you can do a better job than that. Show the path, show the landscaping. Every other user in this town has to do it. My client has a partial interest in a golf course or two. You can't just go out there and throw the 9 holes up and say, drivers, go ahead. The planning board wanted to see where it was going to be, what the parking lot was going to look like, what are the hours of operation. That's what they've got a business going on here. It's a non-residential land use. It's not a cozy little come on over. This is a business. Show it. Do the right thing, folks. So that's what I was focusing on. The other thing I was raising was, I don't know, Jay, are you controlling or is John controlling?
Oh, I can move it.
The subdivision plan, I can just
I didn't put up the subdivision plan.
I don't know if everybody has it or you have maybe you have a large one.
Yes, little paper ones.
On this plan, it took me a while to try to figure it out, but they're consolidating this lot here, and then this lot is also being added in. This whole area, this is a new lot coming in here. This is our concern. We're butters over here. This area is available to accommodate seasonal overflow parking. What does that mean? If you approve it, where's the site plan that shows it? That is not even on the site plan, because that suggests to me you didn't approve anything, therefore nothing can go there. Yet this says well, guess what, folks? You're gonna have seasonal overflow parking for something. I assume it means for Spooky World, but nobody's talking about it. What, are we just gonna close a blind eye? Let's talk about it. Maybe you'll say seasonal parking just means fill it up, but do they come down this driveway? This is a house here. This is a new lot they're creating with a little spindle. Comes down and gives frontage here. But the driveway is going to be by an access over their land. Are people going to park here, walk across this brook and come down? Are people going to cross this neck here with an easement and walk down the driveway? Is this the entrance for all of this parking? And how many cars can fit there? 100 cars? That'll be a new commercial entrance for 22 days. Is that what this board wants to see? Either take it out and leave it blank and say, we have no plans. We're not going to put cars there. We have no use. Or come clean and say, this is going to be parking. And we propose that we don't need to have pavement, we don't need to have sidewalks, we're not going to do it, and you decide. But it's not right. Now, right now, you've got issues down here, which is police control. You're about to add a new one, and someone says, is the planning board reviewing all this? The answer is no. It's not up for your review. But if you approve a plan with that on it, that's bootstrapping into, you can park there now. And that's what we want to hear more about. How do these people get from there? And if they don't want to talk about it, they need to take that off. And they need to come in and say, it's consolidated, but we're not going to use it for parking. And they may not use it for parking without your permission. I don't know where the other 11 acres are, but that is something new. And that's a new plan for you to look at.
And that's the plan that you're going to be presenting, that would be for the next, or whenever.
It's Spooky World parking.
And so just tell us, how are they going to get there? And what are the lighting, what are the pavement? 11 o'clock at night, people going by this house, people going by the brook, is that okay with you guys? No. Where are the cars going to park? Pointing which way? What landscaping is around to prevent lights going in houses if they're there? Let's discuss it a little bit. And it has to be shown on the site plan. That's not here. That is not on this site plan. So those are really the issues here. The whole Spooky World, the fact that they use 11 acres somewhere else, a crosswalk, our position on that is very clear. There is no variance in this town that shows off-site parking for Spooky World. So if they're parking somewhere, they're doing it illegal. There is no site plan that's been approved allowing them to park anywhere. That's parking lot. None of that has been approved, so that's not before you. Right, and I think,
We're saying what's before you is what we're taking in.
Right, and I totally get that. And I think, these are definitely issues that are going to have to be addressed at the appropriate time when the plan is officially before the board and we have the opportunity to review it. Thank you, Attorney Halsey.
Thank you.
When is your September meeting?
This is the thing,
More than 18, so if I can, I don't know which you prefer, 4th or the 18th. If I can possibly talk to the HLN tomorrow, we might be able to do it for you.
Can I just go back to a second? I mean, obviously you heard Attorney Halsey's concern.
Yep.
I just wanted you to get an opportunity to respond. I mean, is there, what do we have here for landscaping? Are we going to have more stuff in this than what we see here? But I think, is it something that, I want to know what you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we can beef up the landscaping a little bit, but don't forget, I mean, the rest of this area is all grass, right? So there's ample green space there. We can certainly beef it up a little bit, but at the same time, you don't want to necessarily overdo it because the folks aren't there for the landscaping; they're for the bumper boats and the laserplex. Right, but we can certainly add
What about
to
like
that
shrubs
plan.
or anything like that, trees or anything? I mean,
I would like to see, I don't know what we call it in this case, but like when I write a program, we do these things called user flows. What's the intended flow going from parking, getting a ticket, going through the whole thing? What is the intended flow?
Right.
Just show gates, maybe beef up the landscaping a bit if that seems to be a concern.
I think
Other
we're
than
going to
that,
want to definitely see something that shows, that an interest in safety. We're dealing with children. Obviously, a fence is appropriate. Shrubs may be appropriate. I think that's something that, you may want to look into.
Sure.
In terms of making it look. But I think, again, I think it needs to be fleshed out a little bit. That's my opinion. I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but that's, something to address. So what do we want to do in terms of?
Well, real quick, before you move on.
Yeah, go ahead.
As far as shrubs and things go, I think with the grass and all the green space is probably within, where it needs to be, but I'm coming back to the fence again because you see like a public pool and it's always got a 6-foot plus fence around the body of water. So just look at that, see if there's maybe that needs to be higher, at least around the 3-foot, deep.
Yeah.
That's cool. If it's within regulation, it's within regulation, but off the top of my head, I don't know what that.
Okay. We'll get that.
For 3 feet? Okay. I guess it's that, but it might be something to be concerned about that, people can access this when you're not there. So it's a 4-foot fence high.
We'll look at that. Yeah.
Anything do you want to address about what was mentioned about season overflow parking?
Well, don't forget. Again, this was not
No, I
done
understand.
in the abstract. Mike and Wayne sat down in this room with Roland Bergeron when they first were looking at buying Spooky World, and Roland Bergeron told them that you don't need site plan approval for temporary parking, and that's been the basis of how they've been operating ever since. Roland said, and then Kevin said in subsequent years, as long as the fire department, the police department are satisfied with your plan, with your parking plan, you don't need site plan because it's a temporary nature. That's what these guys were told. That's what they've been basing 10 years of operations on, right? So when Attorney Hall says you need site plan approval for this temporary parking, that may or may not be accurate.
But just something to consider, I think.
But at the same time,
the emergency access,
sure,
those types of things.
At the same time, we can show you how it
I know
works.
that's not before us this evening, but
Yeah.
maybe just to get the idea that that's what we're going to.
Right, and we're not hiding anything. We can show you how. So Charlie McQuestion and the McQuestion family still farms that field, the DeRocher lot that we were talking about. At the end of the season, it gets rolled out to flatten out, and then Mike and Wayne send their parking crew out. They mark the parking. They put up a temporary fence behind the homes along the Charles Bancroft Highway. They mark out the spots. They have their flaggers out there every night with their lit flashlights, guiding people in, guiding people out. There's clear parking spaces. There's a clear walkway to get to the park, the Spooky World Park. I mean, we can show all that, right? But again, we're working on the premise that we were told 10 years ago that site plan approval was not necessary for a temporary parking.
I guess that's something we should look at, Jay. I just want to make sure that we're operating on that premise. If that's the case and we find that it is, then okay. But if it isn't, then we have to address it. So, but thank you for giving the information. Certainly, we can look into that.
Mike and Wayne are about to kill me as soon as I say this, but we are better off on September 18th than the 4th because we're going to be making some plan changes, some additional information. Perhaps the traffic engineer has to add some information. So if the HLN deadline is tomorrow, we're better off doing the 18th.
Well, here's the thing. Jay and I talked about this morning. How would October be for you? Or is that too late? The only reason I say October, it may give us a little bit of time. And I think, getting the plans, you got to get the plans to Jay, you got to do the study. You may need a little bit more time to digest this. And I don't know how you feel about that, Jay. I mean, I don't know how long you would want
I think for what my preference is worth, for my preference, I would rather see that we have revised plans in hand and we have all the materials that we need prior to scheduling a date specific. And I realize that there's a lot of issues and there's a lot of challenges that surround the plan, but we have had, as this plan has progressed, we have kept continuing it to a date certain only to find that we are not ready and we've had to continue again. And I think that that's really, although I understand a lot of the reasons around that, I think it's a disservice, in particular to the abutters and to other concerned parties who, also don't necessarily have the time to review all the materials. We need the time to review the materials, but I think in deference to the public and to the parties in interest, I think it's to all of our interest to have the materials in hand and to schedule the plan, to schedule a date at that time.
You want to say something?
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, if that's the case, we would like to schedule, sit down with you two, once we have everything, so we could make sure that we're not missing anything.
Yeah, and I think that's important because there are a lot of pieces to this. And there are concerns, and they're definitely being addressed this evening. And I think what has to happen is there has to be a discussion. I think there has to be opportunity for people to respond, to get plans in to Jay, at a certain time. So enough time for him to review it, enough time for people to review it. Whether it be the traffic study, whatever, however that's going to work. So it is going to take, I think it's going to take some time. So, I think maybe that's what you need to do. Maybe you have a discussion with the planner and maybe get some more feedback. If it means having I think what has to happen is I think there's got to be a little bit more teeth to it in terms of, the traffic study. The impact on that is going to be very, very important. Looking at the issue that were addressed tonight in terms of, the seasonal overflow parking, the sidewalks, things of that nature. Those are things I think that have to be focused on. Certainly we have the landscaping issue, but and those types of things, and that's great. But I think really those are the important pieces to this. And I think in order to get this through, those are going to have to be addressed if that's going to happen. So that's my take on it. The question is, what are we going to look at for a time frame? We're going to do that.
I think if that's the direction that the board wishes to go, I think you can continue it to a date to be determined. So you can continue without continuing it to a date specific.
If you wanted to meet with them,
yes,
maybe have a discussion. I don't know if maybe the butters can, Attorney Hollis can be at that discussion. I don't know if that's something you want to do. I leave that to your discretion. But if you want to have a discussion with the planner and Joan and go through this, and then come back and say, well, listen, this is where we are. And get like a status, maybe what's going on. We could do that.
It's fine. We can do that.
If that's amenable.
Yeah.
So I just think, I think there, like I said, there's a lot of pieces to this. You're adding stuff to this, and there's a lot, and I think, these plans have to be detailed. They have to show things. And I think it's important that we address everything and that we do it the right way. That's the critical piece to this, and we need to have answers to those questions, and hopefully we can get that and move forward. So,
will there be new notice, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, there will be new notice.
So
You're definitely gonna get new notice as to the subdivision or the consolidation, I would assume. So that's key.
Well, if we're doing notice to that, we
But you'll definitely
may as
get
well
notice.
be doing.
You will be. You'll certainly get information from us concerning what's going on. And as I said, if you're interested in talking with Attorney Perlman and working with him to try to, have a meeting with the planner and so forth, if you want to do that, if you want to join in on that discussion, you're welcome to do that. That's up to you guys. I leave that to you. But
Okay.
So
So what do you do with the site plan application?
yeah, I think what we can
You
Continue
notice
it.
it all together.
Yeah, we'll notice them.
Just continue to not a date certain?
Right.
Not a bit.
well,
To a date to be determined.
Yeah. Okay.
right. And once you get together and finally get that where you stand or whatever, then just get it scheduled and come in and go from there. Okay. All right. So I would obviously I'm going to entertain a motion at this time to continue the hearing this evening for Mass Funway.
Public input open?
Yes. Okay. Oh yeah, that stays open. That'll remain open until the end of this.
All right, and I can make a motion to continue to the date to be determined.
A date to be determined by the parties and the applicant and the interested parties to the site plan. Okay, so I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have a discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 0.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Attorney Hollis, Mr. Charbonneau.
Yeah, you also have a time tomorrow. Well, give me a time.
Oh, come in here?
Or, well, I'll just tell her I take tax. I couldn't find it myself. 8479.
7-1.
It's 9, 8479.
Okay.
Okay.
I like your sign, by the way, the river access.
There it is.
Says he always good.
Thanks, guys.
I
All
already
right, have a good night. Thank you.
Have a good night, Andy.
Yeah, real happy with that. Making a bit of money.
Okay, next item on the agenda this evening, committee reports. Are there any reports from any committees? I know the Conservation Commission is meeting on Wednesday. And I believe the Lower Merrimack River Local Advisory Committee is meeting on Thursday at 7 p.m. at the National Public Library. Any other reports from anybody? What about the National Regional Planning Commission? Anything?
That's in September.
That's in September. There's a meeting in September. Mhm. All right. Jay, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Joan, do you have anything else?
No, just the minutes.
Just the minutes. Okay, so let's look at the minutes for August 7th. Does anybody have any questions about the minutes? Take a minute to look at them, review them. Changes you'd like to make?
I thought they were accurate.
Okay.
It was when we were talking with Mr. Jefferson,
Yeah.
there was a plan that he might have to come back to the board. He had a zoning board meeting. How
Right.
did that?
I
don't know whatever
actually don't know.
Okay.
I
I think that
didn't
was
know.
in, let's see. I think
Was it approved, or?
motion. On the second page.
Oh, yeah, no, what you wrote is right. I just didn't know what the outcome was for the zoning.
Yeah, what's the zoning board?
Yeah.
It was the next day.
I know it was I saw it on the Litchfield YouTube. I think it was on the, where they do the meetings.
You gotta
I
notice
didn't
a
watch it.
decision.
So if we don't see him, it went well.
Yeah, I mean, if we didn't hear from him, I don't know.
We'll get a copy of the
We'll
notice
get
of
a copy of
decision.
the notice.
Yeah.
I should read the minutes. Okay.
Okay.
No, I thought it looked good. Oh, I'm gonna make a motion. Or after discussion.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do that, you're certainly welcome to.
Anybody else?
Anybody have any other questions or concerns?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from August 7th, 2018.
As amended?
As,
Or no? We're not
there's no
amended.
amended, right?
Okay, so approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have discussion? All those signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Abstained? Okay, motion passes 401. Okay. I think that's everything. Any other business before the board this evening? Oh, I do have something. The budget. We are going to be meeting with the Board of Selectmen on Monday, August 27th, here in Town Hall to go over the budget. We are scheduled to be on their agenda. Just want to let everybody know if they want to attend that meeting. I'm going to be going if anyone else is interested. I don't know if Joan is interested in going, but I certainly, I will be there.
What day was that?
The 27th.
The 27th.
It's a Monday.
This coming Monday?
I'm sorry.
This coming Monday?
Yeah, the 27th. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Quite a big budget.
I've been getting, well, I guess you say weekly reports from the person who does them. And I know we've been doing a lot of site plan review, so we rely on our planner. So I know because for a while we weren't doing a lot of the cases. Now we have been doing them, and obviously time is money, and certainly we have to look at that so that we can get we need funds to do that, and any other changes to the budget that need to be addressed. Do they get copies of that, Joan, or just me?
Of the expenditures, just you.
Okay. If you want, I can email you the budget report that's submitted to the town. Take a look at it if you have any questions or anything. But definitely if you want to come to the meeting, I'm going to be here. I don't know what the Board of Selectmen is basically going to do. I've never done this before, so this is my first time with a budget. I'm sure they have questions. I guess we're going to have to ask that. I don't know. And Troy, did you get a chance to talk to Troy at all?
No.
Do you think you can speak with him maybe? If he's around this week?
Yeah, I'll be in Thursday, so I can.
Yeah, if you could talk to him on Thursday, just see what, his take on it is and what we need to be prepared for, if we need to be prepared for anything. For that, I think that's important. Okay. All right, great. So again, Monday, Board of Selectmen meeting, I think it's at 6 o'clock here. It's going to go over the budgets. So.
You think it's going to be alarming to them because of the work we've been doing?
No.
No, I don't think so. I mean,
Because new businesses have come in for economic.
I mean, yeah.
We can justify,
The applicant pays for Jay's time.
Okay, all right, okay. Because there's been a lot of activity, you're right, yeah. And we could justify through the activity, but yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But if, you want to see something. But I'll send everybody a copy of that and you can take a look at it.
Have the notice of decision. You want me just to forward that to everybody? It doesn't look like they changed anything. It passed.
It passed, so that was allowed. Okay, okay. So, all right. So then
I'll put that in
basically,
the file.
okay, that's fine. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, any other questions or concerns this evening from the board? If not, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have discussion? All those signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 5-0-0. Thank you for joining us this evening and have a good evening. Thank you.